Today we'll talk about China and Taiwan because these are certainly the two big ones, certainly China and Taiwan also on a small scale, probably the size of a good size Chinese province, but certainly a major economy in its own right. But an interesting, I threw together some charts. They're not, this is not going to be on the quiz or anything like that, but just some interesting things. And on the first page of this, if everybody's got a copy, it shows that the share of world GDP, and surprisingly to probably most of us, China was about a third of the world's GDP back in 1820, and the U.S. was virtually nothing. And then China went into a decline, and we went into a major ascent, and we are now roughly a quarter of the world's output, and China is down to 5%, but now growing very rapidly. But, you know, and you people have read all the stuff, and I don't need to go through it, but it is amazing that since 1980 and the ascent of Deng Xiaoping after the Cultural Revolution and Mao Zedong's death in the mid-70s, that China, this is an unbelievable event in China. Just the fact that they've gone from 80% of their people earned less than $1.25, or whatever we would refer to as real, not being in the international economy, under $1.25, to now it's under 15% or something like that. That China has lifted more people out of abject poverty and pushed them up into a market economy faster and to a greater degree than anything we've ever seen in history. 300, 400, 500 million, whatever the number is. This is unbelievable over a 30-year period. And so this is unprecedented, and it's really kind of a minor miracle that they've been able to grow through thick and thin at 8% a year for 30 years. Maybe Japan did this in their ascent, maybe we did it in our ascent in the 19th and 20th centuries, but certainly China, this is an unbelievable performance, and it needs to be recognized, and certainly investors can do that. But it also needs to be pointed out that because we're speaking from here in Vermont and in the U.S., it needs to be pointed out that what we're seeing now, and are going to see more in the future, is not an anti-American tone to the speech, but the feeling that, okay, China is on the ascent, we must be on the descent. And that may be, it may be, but we shouldn't be too pessimistic about ourselves, because it's easy to get pessimistic, both at this time in the cycle and the fact of seeing China rise so dramatically, that we are still, the figure in this chart was saying 27% of the world's GDP. We're probably down to the low 20s now, or 23, 22%. We're 4% of the world's population. We still control about a quarter of everything produced in the world, produced in the U.S., not produced outside the U.S., produced in the U.S. This is an unbelievable figure, and we still have incredible strengths. I mean, entrepreneurship, a rule of law, transparency. We have demographics in our favor. We're not a rapidly aging population like Europe or even China. We're more balanced. We have venture capital. We have education. You know, I think the U.S. has incredible strengths, and so the point is that this is not our century. Last century was our century. This is the century, I think, of emerging economies. But don't sell us short. I think the U.S. is... it's going to be a smaller piece relatively of the world pie, but it's still going, that doesn't mean we can't make significant real headway and continue to be really affluent and wealthy. So I think that the tendency now is to say this is a win-lose situation. If the emerging markets are going to win, we're going to lose. And I'm not sure if that's the case, but we certainly have a lot of problems today. But the Chinese do also right now, and all of this talk about 8% growth and them doing really significantly, it is important. But remember, they've got a lot of problems now. It's starting with their transparency, or lack of it. Who knows how and when and where decisions are actually made? Everybody speculates, but nobody really knows how the Politburo and the decisions are actually made. It's very untransparent. They also, as the growth has increased, China is developing major income disparity now, mostly in the cities, but even the cities versus the countryside. But you go to Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and it used to be that the expats had the money, or expats could afford all of the high-end stuff. Now it's my last trip to Beijing. No way Americans or expats can afford what goes on in the high-end shopping malls. The prices and the stuff is just unbelievable now. The Chinese have the money, though expats don't have the money in a rough sense. So income disparity is growing significantly. You also have ethnic tensions. Who knows? I mean, the U.S. likes the idea of Tibetan independence or Tibetanness, and maybe the Muslims in Xinjiang, and also, but who knows how that might foment, and also who knows how the income disparity might just foment unrest between the rural areas and the urban areas, or between the urban area have-nots and the urban area haves, because you're seeing a lot more demonstrations in China about this. You also have demographics working against China. The old line is that China may get old before it gets wealthy, that the single child policy, which has been in place for, 20 years now or more, has certainly been effective, but now too effective. You know, China is going to be a very elderly population by 2050, and this is going to put more and more pressure on them, whereas the U.S., for instance, is much more balanced. So China, I think, and then you look at the economy, and of course, an economy growing at 8%, people have all sorts of questions right today about have they overinvested in infrastructure right now with their stimulus package, and or what's the quality of the Chinese banks, because China has lent significantly to state-controlled companies, and who knows whether they can pay them back or what the problems with the banking system are going to be. So, there are a lot of issues with China, negatives, a lot of positives for America. But the fact is that China is really growing. And I think one of the things for us in this room and Americans in general is, okay, admit it, and let's see how we can make some money off of this. There's no reason we can't, in a constructive way, do well. Now, the first obvious way Americans have made money off of this is the traditional way, using China to source material or products. That has led to much of China's growth, the export sector. Walmart's estimated to be, 15% of all of China's exports go to Walmart. And certainly, it's significant. And certainly, remember when Walmart, it must have been 10 or 15 years ago, had the big publicity push about buy American, or we're going to source American? That didn't seem to last too long, It seems to have gone by the wayside. But, that has been and continues to be a major source for many companies to either go over there and manufacture for export, or to source toys, electronics, apparel,